You asked for it, so here it is. More details from the world of The Last of Us. Welcome back to the Austin Angle, and if you're new to the channel, thanks for tuning in. You won't regret it. Probably. This is part 3 of 3, and I'll link the other parts in the comments below. If you haven't seen them, I highly recommend you do that. To cap this in-depth look off into these incredible games, I played through Abby's section of part 2. Arguably everyone's least favorite half of the game. Couldn't be me. But I gotta say, for having just shy of 230 hours across the original and remastered versions of this game, it's incredibly astounding how many details I found during this run. This is without a doubt the most amount of details I've had in one of these videos, and some are possibly my favorite, so without further ado, let's get into it. If we as gamers have learned anything from my previous 2 details videos, it's that Naughty Dog as a studio is the king of committing to the bit. It's clear that they don't waste time or resources because these developers think of every goddamn minute detail, even when they know that players will never see them. But, well, they didn't see me coming. That's no more evident than in our first detail of the video. After you leave the aquarium with Lev in tow on a mission to save Yara, you'll come across an old hair salon. It's not a path you need to advance through, but rather a forgotten location now ravaged by Mother Nature. However, if you're feeling a little scarce for resources, you can go in here to pick up some loot, and you'll just so happen to find a moment frozen in time. A glimpse into the world now removed from existence. A photo of the shop sits on the wall, a reminder of a world Abby and Lev will never see. Pretty cool, right? But that's not the only picture that has a direct correlation to the physical world in the game. Something subtle lingers within the WLF stadium, more specifically in Manny and Abby's room. Manny mentions his love of anime during your brief time with them. Now this detail is actually kind of a twofer. It makes sense then that you can find an anime poster right by Manny's bed, which I assume is a nod to the movie of the almost identical name, but there isn't just a poster. The character on the poster just so happens to be an action figure on the shelf to the left, and they modeled it to have articulation joints. Why? Because they could. Literally the only reason. The next one is small, but literally massive in a sheer BMI kind of way. Welcome to the new season of My 600-Pound Life. No, I'm kidding, but once the Rat King breaks out of its 25-year-long cage, it just kind of disappears, you know? You don't walk out and see it. You walk out, it's gone, and you know it's free because the doors have been mangled worse than my insides after eating Taco Bell. But the asset itself, physically, is gone. Now, so many games would just leave it at that, right? Maybe they'd have a little bit of a blood trail, but Naughty Dog went the extra mile. If you follow the path of blood, you can see where it went, through the parking garage and up into the rubble, out of this area. Now speaking of Up, and no, not the Disney movie, even though that's a really good movie, while Abby is facing her petrifying fear of heights, we as the player can see exactly where we are going to end up once we arrive at the hospital. You can see the lobby entrance, and even the ambulance that just sits past this gate. And if we're already here at the hospital, well, I might as well share the next detail I found. I never thought that I'd find stacking boxes so intriguing. Once you get here, you can walk around and talk to members of the WLF, but what you probably didn't know is if you sit here and watch this woman, she will legitimately stack each and every box realistically into this container. Now, obviously the developers didn't expect some fucking lunatic to sit here and watch for 5 minutes, seeing how she eventually starts putting boxes into other boxes and it just becomes a mangled mess of clipping. They still didn't have to do this at all. And realistically, who besides me is going to sit here and watch this for 5-10 minutes, right? But just like they didn't have to do this next one. Cardboard is made out of paper, right? Well, paper being made out of trees, of course. Trees in the opening of Abby's narrative have peeling tree bark. Now, this isn't just a cool detail to add into the game, it's a fact of nature. These trees are birch trees, a common species found on Earth that shed their bark, allowing the tree to grow as bark, well, cannot stretch. Bet you didn't expect to get a nature lesson here, huh? That's the power of video games, baby. The next few should probably come as no surprise, seeing how these games have a thing for allowing even the smallest text to be read. But so many games, even including the newest Resident Evil, have blurred and unreadable text everywhere, which after playing these games really takes away from the immersion. I know, I'm spoiled. While we are with the younger Abby here, we find ourselves needing to navigate these old washrooms now littered with trash. Trash that can be red. I don't know who the hell was eating corned beef and sardines at the zoo, but hey, good for them. And speaking of like the readable text, at this point I kind of expected anything my character physically holds to be legible, especially if you watch my previous videos, but I never expected that of what others hold to not only be legible, but to make sense given their location and roles within the WLF. Examples? Absolutely. Abby's day one has you go through medical tents within the FOB. If you sneak up behind this lady here and snoop, you'll be able to read a pre-operative checklist. Small, but it makes the WLF seem like a much more organized machine, and they actually take care of their members. However, this guy sitting in the cafeteria is just minding his own business, drawing literally no attention to himself. He's writing notes, and I was curious, so naturally I got up all into space, and turns out he is writing notes based off the items he needs to secure from the hospital, as you see later in the game, with Isaac ordering everything to be removed from the hospital that could help them in their coming war with the Scars. But better yet, and this is gonna blow your freaking mind, I promise, you can find this very same guy at the hospital when you arrive there as Abby. Like, dude, I'm actually speechless. Like, who thinks of this when they're making a game? But I can't get too sidetracked because we have a video to complete here, and the next one is incredibly relevant as my fiance and I are looking to adopt a dog later this year. Bear and Alice are the two dogs you'll interact with in this game. Bear being the first one you get to play fetch with, and I won't lie, I played fetch with him for quite a while, and in doing so I noticed something dogs actually do. Every time Abby winds up to throw the ball, whether she actually follows through and throws it or not, Bear will react by whining in anticipation every single time. That said, every realized world needs some kind of D&D counterpart, right? I'm going to call it Galactic War because that happens to be the name of the figures you can find throughout the game, but this apartment is Galactic War Central. This is obviously a nod to the D&D players around the world, but it stretches beyond this small space. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't appreciate the details while we're here. It's like they were playing this long D&D campaign when everything went down. The dice remain on the table, names with stats sit on the divider, and the thing is, you can find these figures that they use in these D&D campaigns around the game world, even sitting in packages in shops, showing its popularity and marketability before, well, everything went sideways. And I mentioned at the start of the video that I have a substantial amount of details to fit into this video, and I want to save what I believe to be the best 3 for last. So with that said, I'm going to do a quick honorable mention section to get through the bulk of what I have left. Here we go! This one comes straight from a viewer that I have never noticed before. It comes from Mr. Sukwu8257. Abby's personal record for her gym stats can be seen within the gym on a chalkboard. I'm actually surprised I've never noticed this one before, so anyway, good catch, man. There's something so incredibly tangible about how water interacts with the environment, how the water collides and just runs off this railing blew my mind. You can find frogs hopping around in the game world, not really a surprise to see small bouts of wildlife in games now, but the detail and animation behind this thing is insane. Now, quite a few of the larger buildings within this game have floor plans you can find mounted on walls just in case of fires. When Abby goes back for Lev and Yara to relieve some of her guilt, she gets shot at by Lev and then announces herself. Now you can see her proper trigger discipline as she goes from finger off the trigger to briefly putting it on the trigger when she gets no response from Lev, and then quickly withdrawing it again. It kind of shows how willing you have to be to put a bullet in someone to survive, but also just the proper trigger discipline is super cool. You briefly go through a small section of Chinatown on day 1 of Abby. Within one of the restaurants called the Ruby Dragon, you can find a single menu standing upright on a table with all of the menu items legible. Not really surprised at this point, but it's still super cool. Clothing racks. Never thought clothing racks would draw my attention in a game, but here we are. Within the stadium, you can make your way over to some clothing racks, and there you can find all of the racks labeled with different assets on each that match the actual label. women's shirts, jackets, jeans, just cool shit. If you crawl around in water after getting covered in dirt and mud, you'll wash off the specific body part that you actually soak in water. Vases you find in Chinatown have real-time destruction. They will break apart in the exact area where you hit them. And that wraps up the honorable mentions. We've made it, finally, hooray! The final 3 details await us. I'm actually really excited to know what everyone thinks about these, so please comment below. Also like and subscribe for more nonsense like this. During the final Scar battle where you fight this brute, well, you almost don't survive because this guy won't go down, almost like he has the Rock's no-lose contract, but eventually he gets 3 extra holes in his face while on top of Abby. Now when she stands upright, you can see the blood that ran down her face during that fight because it's horizontal on her face instead of vertical. Speaking of blood, Naughty Dog loves blood physics, and when you get a bunch of blood on the floor, the real solution is probably to mop it, right? You want to get rid of it. Mop's probably the best tool for the job. This girl gets it, mopping up blood in the FOB. But look at how great they animated this. The streaks precisely follows the mop's path. I've never had so much intrigue in blood, mainly because the sight of real blood actually makes me pass out, because I'm a real man. Okay. Last one, here we go. It's very fitting that the last detail of this video and this series pertains to Ellie. One that is so incredibly subtle, you'll need to have 100% brain power to see it, and hey, if you did, well, you're a super genius, but also, why the fuck are you here watching this video? We all know that ending, right? When Ellie and Abby have their final confrontation shrouded in an ominous thick with 2 C's layer of fog. Ellie, knowing she is about to throw hands, takes off her bag. Now, the shot where she puts the bag in the boat is actually from within the boat, right? When we see Ellie take off her bag, she quickly dips it below her waist before setting it into the boat. This would obviously put the bag into the water, which is why when she places it into the boat, water is dripping off that specific portion of the bag. It's such a small detail, but it shows the love and passion for the game. Look, the purpose of these videos is to show off the sheer amount of work that goes into games like this, and honestly my pure fascination with it. Naughty Dog didn't just put details in here haphazardly, they built an entire world that's connected. Brands aren't just found in a few locations to add something cool to look at. Brands carry on throughout the world. Those D&D characters, you can find them in multiple shops and apartments. Roost and Coffee, you can find several locations throughout the city because it's a chain. Every detail, regardless of how minute it is, does nothing but add to the world. It's next level immersion, and it works whether you find these details or not. Even if you don't actively acknowledge them, your brain knows that they are there subconsciously. There's a reason I and many others keep going back to part 1 and 2. Story aside, the world feels so expressive. Every place you visit has a personality and a mini story to tell. It's the difference between building a game and building something that is emotionally resonant at all times. That said, those are all of the details I found throughout Abby's section and I guess Santa Barbara that I found worth talking about anyway. There were definitely others. Now you may have found details that you found impressive that I missed, and if that's the case, I would absolutely love to hear from you in the comments. I love having discussions about game worlds. Also, let me know if there are any games you would like to see me cover in a similar fashion. You know how YouTube works, like, sub, comment, and thank you so much for all the support. You guys are the best. Peace.
It's over.